Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the stream again. Uh, Sorry about that. Streamlabs doesn't like it whenever I stop one stream and then start another one right after it, so I had to reset the OBS. But that's okay. Um, Welcome to Oracle. It is my most recent novel that I have published. Um, it's about Greek mythology, but it's kind of set in the modern day, sort of like I hate to say it because like I hate whenever people compare it to him, but it's sort of kind of like a Rick Riordan, Percy Jackson sort of vibe where it's got like ancient Greek gods, but they're set in the modern day sort of thing. Um, but it is very different, I promise. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and read Oracle. Uh, I released this in 2017. As you can see, I don't have a dedication for this one. But still, uh, this is my newest one out, so I hope that you guys enjoy. Chapter 1. My father always told me there is no such thing as a free lunch. True, he stole that from an economic principle, but the concept, no matter how obscure or irrelevant, holds true. When you get something, it always comes with a price tag attached. It may not be what you wanted, but that's life. It was this saying that echoed in my head as I helped to rustle a herd of third graders at the Museum of Ancient History. It wasn't easy. Sure, I got to skip a day of school to help out, but now I wasn't sure if I'd made the right call. They were so bored by the curator's lecture that they seemed to want to be anywhere else but in the group. I empathized with them, truly. The man's voice was so monotone, I thought I would fall asleep just standing there. A small child walked up to me and tugged on my pants leg. When I looked down at him, he asked, "When do we see the dinosaurs?" I could feel my father's eyes on me, his face filled with eager anticipation. Being a history teacher, he'd always wanted me to work with children someday. Well, I'm not really sure, I admitted. Don't worry, though. I promise we'll get to see them soon. Satisfied with my answer, he melded back in with the pint-sized crowd. Please don't let me have just lied to that kid about dinosaurs, or else I'll never hear the end of it, I mumbled under my breath. As you can see, the curator prattled, we are presently standing within our Hall of Greek Antiquities. Here you will be able to see many artifacts and heirlooms collected from modern-day Hisarlik, or what many scholars believe to be the ancient city of Troy. Give me a sec, guys. I just heard something really big thud. Do I have my phone on me? I do. Let me make sure my roommate's not texting me and telling me to shut up. I'm kidding. He doesn't actually like do that. Just trying to make sure that it's not bothering him or anything. It's still kind of early, so I have to be kind of careful whenever I'm doing these streams because I don't want to wake him up or keep him awake. Or what many scholars believe to be the ancient city of Troy. During the Trojan War, many great heroes perished. It was such a major war, even the gods themselves were divided. An example of this can be seen on the late 12th century plate depicting a famous encounter between Hera, the goddess of marriage and wife of Zeus, and Artemis, goddess of the hunt and Hera's stepdaughter. It is said that when fighting, Hera struck her stepdaughter with her own quiver, sending her crying into the lap of her father. Bitch, a small voice spat beside me. Turning to look at who had spoken, my eyes fell upon an 8-year-old with long strawberry blonde hair and bright blue eyes. Her tiny hands were balled up into fists as she glared at the plate. What did you say? I asked in disbelief. Looking up at me, her intense gaze faded instantly, and she gave a playful giggle. I said the smaller one looks pretty. I was certain I had not misheard her, but still I just shrugged it off. I agree, I told her. Did you know that Artemis was also the goddess of little girls? Wow, really? She asked, her eyes sparkling. Despite her question, I could see a glib sarcasm hidden behind her expression. I just nodded in response this time. I decided I really didn't want to find out the limit of this child's irritability, lest I wound up with a tantrum on my hands. If you look to the right, you'll see our Pantheon room, which is presently still being assembled. Does anyone know what a Pantheon is? Come on, man. Most of these kids can't even spell Pantheon, I wondered under my breath, drawing a snicker from the young girl. Well, at least I could make her laugh somehow. As if able to hear my words, the curator's eyes swiveled onto me. What about you, young man? Do you know what a Pantheon is? I sighed. I should have seen that coming. He probably thought I was some sort of delinquent that had to do this for community service or something. Despite that I was a good kid, I actually got that a lot. Most people avoided me because of my intimidating presence, which younger children never seem to notice. Yeah, I answered. A pantheon refers to the collection of gods of a religion. Specifically, it started with the Romans, then became a catch-all term. My father clapped me on the back, practically beaming with pride. You have to try harder than that, Mr. Latona. I'm afraid my son Will is far more clever than he looks. Thanks, Dad, I grumbled. I see, the curator sniffed. Anyway, the Pantheon Hall, as the young man in the back explained, houses many statues of the Greek gods and goddesses. When it opens in another couple of months, you'll be free to return with your parents to view it. It promises to be an exciting display of culture and history that, as he continued to ramble on while moving further into the exhibit, I noticed a movement to my right. We were the only ones in the museum today, so no one else should have. No one. Jeez. Give me a moment. Sorry about that, guys. Man, I need to start drinking something a little bit stronger for these streams. We were the only ones in the museum today, so no one else was supposed to be here. Sure enough, when I hung back for a moment, I saw a trace of strawberry blonde hair, signaling that the crude little girl had decided to give herself a tour of her own. Moving to my father's side, I nudged him with my elbow. A lamb has separated from the flock. I'll herd her back in. You know, you don't have to speak in code. You could just say a kid ran off. Roger that, Papa Bear, I joked before going after her. Sure enough, the hall she'd vanished down led to the unfinished exhibit. Judging by the swinging velvet rope, she must have come this way. Ducking under it myself, I began to walk through the eerie room, which was empty save the statues, all covered by white tarps. It was like a scene from a horror movie or something. I swear if that kid jumped out at me, they'd have to cart me off in an ambulance. As I continued further through the corridors, my eyes came upon a beautiful woman who was removing one of the tarps from a statue. The statue was that of a goddess with large wings, and in its outstretched hand was a replica of an apple made of gold. The ornate object shimmered in the sunbeams that filtered through the museum's skylights. Behind her, the little girl was creeping closer, hunched low to the ground like a cat stalking a mouse. It was obvious that she was going to do something stupid, and with my luck, the lady was working to get the exhibit ready for the public. Moving quickly, I grabbed the little girl's hand just as the woman turned around to regard us in surprise. I am so sorry, I quickly apologized as the girl began to squirm in my grasp. Kids, I promise we won't bother you anymore. Let go of me, dumbass, the girl growled as I began pulling her away. Now I knew I wasn't hearing things. Oh, it's no problem, handsome, the woman assured me. I adore little children. I just want to gobble them up. Though I could say the same of you as well, she added with a flirtatious wink. My cheeks blazed a bright red. Thanks? I tried, unsure of what to say to the older woman who was clearly flirting with me. Don't mention it, she purred, giving me a wide smile that revealed a row of sharp-pointed teeth. What in the world? I stumbled back in surprise as her legs seemed to flow together like water, allowing her to slither towards me with a soft hiss. We're leaving, I whispered to the girl. Now! I turned and ran as fast as I could, with the girl dragging along behind me. The woman was hot on her heels, too. Stop! Stop! The girl cried, struggling against me, but I ignored her until she suddenly stopped me cold in my tracks by planting her feet. I said stop! When I looked back to the girl, I was shocked to see that in my grip was no longer an 8-year-old, but what one could imagine the girl to look like if she were 18. What in the hell is going on? I gasped. The girl wasn't in the simple dress she'd worn before, but was now dressed in fitted leather armor that showed off voluptuous curves. On her back she wore a leather quiver filled with arrows, and in a movement she manifested a bow within her grasp out of thin air. Shut up and stay still, she instructed, drawing an arrow and firing in a flash to pierce through the woman's chest. I'd expected her to fall down dead, and yet she just seemed stunned before letting out another angry hiss. Gods, I hate Lamia, the girl growled under her breath. Unsure of what to think, all I knew was that I would rather see the woman dead than have her come any closer. Aim for the head, I cried as the girl drew her bow and fired again, shooting her this time in the other breast. Hey, do I tell you how to be an idiot? The archer demanded. No? Then don't tell me how to do my job either. That was when I could hear another hiss from nearby. A woman, almost identical to the one that we'd first seen, emerged from behind one of the tarp-covered statues and began advancing on us from behind. Whatever your name is, there's another one behind us, I warned, backing closer to her. I raised my fist as if I were about to fight, but the truth was I wasn't sure I'd be able to do anything against these monsters. You just noticed that? I suppose you also think there's only two of them. She scoffed, drawing another arrow, this time hitting the woman in her throat. Still, she simply yanked out the arrow with a gurgling hiss and threw it aside. Damn it! As the other one came closer to me, I went to swing at her, striking her hard in the jaw. However, when my fist made impact, it was less like hitting bone and flesh and more like striking at gelatin. She hissed, grabbing my wrist and sinking two elongated fangs into my forearm. I let out a scream of pain. I could feel her injecting something into my blood that made me dizzy. Reaching behind me to alert the archer, I managed to touch her hip where I found a knife. A knife! Grabbing the handle, I yanked it from its sheath. Hey! The archer cried in protest, but I ignored her and thrust into the woman's gut. The lamia, as the girl had called them, let out a loud shriek. Pulling her fangs from my arm, her skin became dappled with bright orange spots of embers. In a matter of seconds, she'd been reduced to nothing but a pile of ash. What the hell did you just do? The girl growled. It bit me, I groaned, ignoring her question to nurse the wound. Idiot, I don't care about that. Just tell me where you stabbed her. The stomach. Thank you. Was that so hard? She scoffed. Firing another arrow, the first lamia disintegrated under attack. Yes, finally. Nearly a dozen lamias had filed into the large chamber, each one advancing on us with a hungry gleam in their eyes. However, the girl remained still and mouthed something. What are you doing? I cried. They're coming. Unless you're saying some sort of magic spell, get to shooting. Counting, she stated calmly. Now shut up. You're breaking my concentration. You're counting? In a blur of movement, she grabbed an arrow and, drawing back the string, paused to take aim. Within the time it took to blink, the arrow vanished from the bow, launching itself into the first lamia's stomach. The girl let out a whooping cheer, a large smile on her face as she began to move faster. I gaped in awe as she ran around the room, firing arrows with near pinpoint accuracy and sending the lamia to their doom, one at a time. A hiss behind me brought my focus back to the danger. Wheeling about, I lashed out with the knife, but she managed to leap back enough that I just barely scratched her just above her navel. Suddenly there was a rush of wind just an inch from my hip, and the serpent woman burst into flames. The arrow that had been in her stomach clattered to the ground just as the archer gave a sadistic giggle. That counts as my kill. Who in the world are you? I gasped as she continued reducing the lamia into piles of ash and cinders. As if to answer my question, the next arrow she fired ricocheted twice, once off one of the museum's marble columns and again off the polished granite floor, before flying through a tarp that covered a statue and into the lamia she had been struggling with. Time seemed to slow as the white tarp concealed the burning form of the monster, revealing another, the statue. As the archer drew her bow once more, she mirrored the statue almost identically, save its scowl replaced by her eager grin. I knew then who the mystery girl was. Artemis, I mouthed silently, my tongue going dry. Releasing the arrow, it spiraled through the air to kill another of the foul monsters. Last one, she trilled before reaching to her quiver to find it empty. Immediately, her smile faded. Damn, out of arrows. Hey, dumbass, give me my knife back. I couldn't even bring myself to speak as I wordlessly returned her weapon. Without even a word of gratitude, she turned and hurled the knife, sending it spinning end over end towards the snake woman. You threw it? I cried in shock. What if she'd missed? Then we'd be without arrows or a knife. Sure enough, the knife went into the woman's stomach, but just barely enough to stick into her. Artemis, however, dove over one of the piles of ash, scooping up their arrow mid-roll and taking aim. With a gleam in her sapphire blue eyes, she let loose the arrow, slamming the knife deeper into her stomach and causing the lamia to give a mournful shriek as she burned away. Yeah, that's how it's done. And you doubted me. The archer laughed nonchalantly before banishing her bow and moving to collect her arrows. By the way, I'd tell you to get that bite checked out. Lamia venom is pretty lethal. I would, but honestly, no doctor would be able to help you. They'd just scratch their empty heads over it until you died. I'm going to die? I cried. Artemis, you have to help me. She looked at me confused. Who the hell are you? How do you know who I am? She demanded, the smile fading from her lips as she jabbed her arrow just in front of my nose. Please, I begged. I don't want to die. Gods, you baby, I'm not going to let you die. I may believe in survival of the fittest, but you did help me out with your one measly kill. I'll patch you up, but you'd better tell me how you know who I am. So, speak up. Did Apollo tell you I was here? I pointed to the statue behind her. When she looked up at it, her jaw dropped. That's you, right? You're Artemis. That is such bullshit. Seriously, what are the damned odds that it'd be my statue that the stupid human saw? God's damn it all, she grumbled under her breath. Artemis, help, please. I meekly reminded her, holding out my arm. She sighed, turning back to me. Yeah, yeah, keep your shirt on, mortal. Reaching into a pouch on her waist, she removed a few leaves and began chewing them for a moment until they were a fine paste. Grabbing my wrist, she spit the goop onto the wound before tearing a strip of her undershirt to wrap it. The paste she'd applied stung, and I had to keep myself from grimacing at the way she'd applied it. This will save me? I questioned nervously. You'll live, for now, she affirmed, giving the bandage an experimental tug to make sure it was tight enough. So here's how this is going to play out. I know you humans have some weird obsession with blurting out everything that enters your heads, but you're not going to mention this to anyone. You didn't see anything, you didn't hear anything. In fact, if anyone asks where you've been, what you've done, or how you got this injury, you're going to tell them you fell and woke up with this thing on your arm. What? Also, a handsome-ish guy is most likely going to talk to you. Looks a bit like me, except he's got this stupid grin on his face. He's going to ask you if you want to spend more time with me. Your answer is going to be, I don't know what you're talking about. Leave me alone or I'll call the police. If you tell him anything other than that, I'll put an arrow in that empty cavity where your brain is supposed to be. Got it? My eyes searched her shining blue ones as I tried to wrap my head around everything. There was an honest-to-goodness goddess in front of me who'd just patched a bite from a snake woman and was now threatening my life. As the whole situation sank in, I began to feel a little queasy. Noting my expression, she frowned. This isn't one of those things where you pass out or vomit, is it? I really don't have time to clean up that mess, literally or figuratively. As sick as I felt to my stomach, I managed to swallow it down and shake my head no. Good. Now, when the handsome-ish guy comes up to you and asks if you want to spend time with me, what are you going to say? I don't know what you're talking about. Leave me alone or I'll call the police. I stammered back to her nervously. Good boy, she grinned, giving me a playful yet condescending slap on the cheek. Now, I just need to figure out how I'm going to clean this place. Can't have a more intelligent human figuring out what's going on, now can we? When she turned her back to me, I just stood there awkwardly. I had to admit, she certainly lived up to the description of a goddess. She was absolutely stunning, despite the small amounts of dirt on her cheeks and hands. Her breasts were clearly bound to ensure that they were constrained beneath her thick carapace, but that made them no less appealing. When she caught me staring, I quickly turned my head away. If she wanted to kill me now, it was best I didn't let her catch me eyeing her up. When I finally found my voice again, I cleared my throat and asked, How is this possible? How are you here in front of me? Greek gods aren't real. They're just a myth. I'm sorry, did you say something? She called over her shoulder. I'd swear I heard someone, but that can't be right because no one saw me and nothing happened. Before I could respond, a hand suddenly clasped me on my shoulder, and there was a bright flash in my eyes from a camera phone. Selfie! A voice cheered as I blinked the spots from my eyes. Ah, perfect. The boy next to me grinned before he began typing on his phone. Hanging out with that RL Artemis and new guy. Hashtag Greek life for reals. He read slowly before pushing submit. That ought to get me some followers. Turning to me, his smile never fading, he jutted out his hand, taking mine with a hearty shake. Hey there, Apollo. Got a poetry, song, archery, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Pleased to meet you in person. How you been? Sis treating you right? Sis? I managed to ask, my head spinning from how fast he spoke. Now, Apollo, Artemis began, leave the human alone so he can get back to his idiotic, mundane human life. He clearly doesn't want anything to do with us, so if you just let him go, he'll... So what sort of music do you like to listen to, Will? Can I call you Will? I know your name is technically William, but Will's easier to say, and Bill, well, Bill just sounds silly if you ask me. How do you know my name? I asked, finally recovering from the flash. And wait, did you just post something on Twitter? Oh, yeah, you have a Twitter, right? I should have tagged you. Silly me. But seriously, Will, music? Talk to me. Symphonic metal mostly? Nightwish, Camelot, that sort of thing? His personality was almost as overwhelming as Artemis' threat to kill me, or the realization that there actually was an Artemis to threaten to kill me. A man after my own heart, Apollo laughed. You've got great taste, Will. Speaking of great taste, what do you think of my twin? She's pretty cool, right? I know she acts tough, but inside she's really a big softy. You think you'd like to hang out with her more? It'd be fun, right? My eyes went from the hyperactive teen to the huntress whose eyes threatened me with death if I were to answer the question. To be honest, fun is not how I'd imagine spending more time with her to be. You're the handsome-ish guy? I asked, unsure what else to say. Oh, that's kind of you. I'm flattered, really. Now, answer the question. Feel free to say yes. Anytime. Seriously. Like, just say yes. Don't even think about it. Again, I looked to Artemis, who pantomimed shooting me with an arrow before dragging a finger across her throat. Looks be damned, it was clear any time I spent with her would be my last. I don't know what you're talking about. Leave me alone or I'll call the police? I tried hesitantly, not willing to risk the wrath of the ill-tempered goddess. For a moment, Apollo seemed puzzled by my response before a light gleamed in his blue eyes. Oh, I gotcha, he said with a wink and nudging me with his elbow. Sure thing, sure thing. Say no more. I'll let you get back to your business. It was excellent meeting you, Will. I wish you the best of luck in the future. Keep up the good work. Don't do drugs. Stay in school. That sort of thing. Go ahead and run along now. We won't bother you any more. He waved farewell as I stumbled back into the main hall in a daze. Sure enough, my father had all the kids gathered in the group by the door. When he saw me, he let out a sigh of relief. All right, kids, everyone back on the bus. He then turned to me to whisper where only I could hear, I did a head count after you left. I was curious who it was you were chasing down. Your eyes must have been playing tricks on you because all of my students were present. Yeah, sorry. I got lost in the museum. Sorry I took so long. Not wanting to answer any more questions, I made sure to tug on the sleeve of my hoodie, covering up the bandage that Artemis had given me. It was the only proof that my encounter had been real at all. The entire bus ride back, I stayed silent. I couldn't stop asking myself questions that I knew I didn't have the answer to. Was I going crazy? Had I actually seen a god and goddess? Rolling up my sleeve slightly, I gazed down at the green fabric. Someone had definitely wrapped my arm. But maybe it was one of the staff at the museum, and I just had some weird fever dream. Maybe I actually did hit my head. Even when I got home, my mind was racing with thoughts about what occurred. For a long while, I stared at my blank computer screen, unsure of what to expect. Despite what Apollo said, I could feel in my gut that I had not seen the last of the two. Hesitantly, I turned on my computer and after booting it up, did a Google search for Artemis. Immediately, thousands of results came up. Clicking the first link, I was taken to a Wikipedia page. Before I could begin reading it, though, my bedroom window suddenly flew open and Apollo climbed through. Hiya, Will, he greeted cheerfully. What are you doing? I demanded, trying to control my heart rate, which had skyrocketed from the sudden intrusion. Coming to see you, obviously, Apollo replied. I meant, what are you doing here, in my house? You can't just come barging in through the damned window. You could have knocked on the door. Not as fun, he dismissed, picking up one of the CD cases by my nightstand to inspect it. Hey, Dragon Force, Heroes of Our Time. Great album. Do you have Valley of the Dead? Been meaning to listen to that one. Why are you here? I repeated. What do you want from me? Gotcha. Straight to the point. Simple, clean, I like it. Here's the skinny Will. My sister, Artemis, she's something of a loner. No friends, keeps to herself, lives in the woods, thinks the internet is some sort of trap for capturing wallabies or something. I want you to be her friend, Will. Simple as that. You realize that she threatened to kill me if I even acknowledged her existence, right? I argued. Not that I'd even know where to start. I mean, this is insane. This can't be real. Psh, she does that to everyone. Don't take it so personally. Look, gods and goddesses have personal servants called oracles. They're not like slaves or anything, but they represent the gods in mortal affairs. What? Are you even listening to me? I asked. You cannot be here. You don't exist. I want you to be Artemis Oracle. She needs someone to spend time with, and she seems to like you. Like me? Maybe you didn't realize weird hallucination, but the other weird hallucination that I certainly didn't meet, because that'd be insane, threatened to kill me. She hates me. Did I not just say to stop taking that so personally? He retorted, putting his hands on his hips. Look, it's not a big deal. It's the easiest job in the world. You spend time with her, help her out every now and then, get some cool Kodak moments. Hey, you could even brag to your friends that you get to spend a majority of your time with a pretty girl. Not to mention, she's a literal goddess. How cool is that, right? Do you know how many mortals know about us? The answer is not many. I'll say it again, I tried in exasperation. I don't know what you're talking about. Leave me alone, or I'll call the police. If for no reason other than to lock my crazy ass up in a hospital. He visibly sank before letting out a sigh. All right, you win. I won't bother you any more, okay? He went to climb back out of the window before his eyes caught a glimpse of the computer screen. Able to scan the page before I could shut down the tab, his eyes gleamed with a mischievous light. It was for a school project, I lied, shoving him back towards the window. Now will you please get out of my house? Sure thing, but before I go, would you mind if I borrowed the CD? Fine, take it. It's yours. Just go, I gasped. Grabbing it, he gave me one last friendly wave before vanishing out my window. Closing it behind him tightly, I quickly locked it and crashed onto my bed. I could still barely wrap my mind around it all. Hours later, just as I fell asleep, my eyes took one last look at the bandage wrapped around my arm. All right. As you can see, these chapters are a little bit longer than the previous ones that I was writing. So this was supposed to be more for a high school age, young adults, out of high school sort of age group. Um, Whereas the other novels that I wrote are for more middle grade, middle school age. Uh, that being said, I think I'm going to call it a night here. I know this was a rather short stream, but combined with the previous one, it's a pretty good length. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in. I hope that you have uh, enjoyed watching this stream. Next time that I stream, we'll continue from here at chapter 2 onward. I hope that you guys really enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to come and watch my stream. It really does mean a lot to me. We're going to have our first D&D stream next Wednesday on the 9th of March. So if you guys like Dungeons and Dragons, if you love fantasy and role playing and things like that, I highly encourage you to come and watch our stream. Um, this stream is my personal one, Keep It a Lunal, but the stream that you're going to look for the D&D stream is Alder Fox Adventures, which you will find on my Twitter account. Um, that being said, thank you again so much for tuning